I really wanted to welcome everyone that's joining us tonight. It's really exciting that you've attended. It's great that you're here. You know, we have people from all over Australia that are joining us. I know that we have people from Indonesia joining us. I know there's people from New Zealand that are also joining us. And I believe there's also a couple of people from the UK and the US. So we really are global. It's fabulous that you're all here. I really hope that one day we can do this in person properly and that I get to meet, if not all of you, some of you. It would be a wonderful thing if we can do that again. But gee, you know, technology is fantastic that we can actually come together, not together, to do this. So thank you very much. I also would like to welcome some of the Property Sharemarket Economic members that have joined us tonight. So thank you for being part of it. It's great to have you here. And also to welcome some of our Boom Bust Bulletin members that are also here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Boom Bust Bulletin subscription a little bit later on in the webinar. So fabulous to have you here. And the other two people that I really would like to thank, and that is Phil Anderson and Arkhil Patel. Now, Phil Anderson is the author of The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking. And it was Phil who first, hello Melda, it's Phil who first got me introduced to timing in economics and timing investments. And this was in 2011. And now we're working together and helping other people learn and understand about the 18.6 year cycle and how you can time your investments. So I want to thank Phil for this opportunity. And also I wanted to welcome Arkhil and thank Arkhil Patel, because he's also one of the directors of Property Sharemarket Economics. Arkhil is based in London. And I know that he's joined us tonight, and it's in the morning for him in London. So thanks, Arkhil. Arkhil is also, you could say, a guru in regards to economics and economic cycles. He also does analysis in regards to commodity cycles and has put together some prescient forecasts in regards to commodities. So Arkhil, thanks for joining us. So tonight, or today, wherever you are in terms of your timing and time zones, I'm going to break the webinar up into 3 sections. So the first section is actually going to talk about the She-cession. And I'm hoping that by the end of the first part, you will understand why it is that I want to predominantly help women. I want to help everybody, but it's women I predominantly want to assist. And I do hope by the time that I finish that part 1, you will understand why. Now, part 2, I'll be introducing Jen and Sarah from She Thrives with Ease. And they're going to help discuss what it takes and what it means to put together your framework or your foundation of your investment strategy, your financial strategy. And in the part 3 is where I'm going to come back on and talk about timing and how imperative timing is and give you some timing of what's going to occur over the next 6 to 10 years. So allow me to share my screen. What's going to happen, oh gosh, I think in around 45 minutes is I'm going to email you a copy of Phil Anderson's ebook, Where Are We and What the Hell Just Happened. Now, he wrote this last year after the March 2020 panic. It's a really good book. it's worth $45 US, but I'm going to gift it to you because you've attended tonight. I encourage you to read it. He talks about how the market panic wasn't actually a black swan event, and he explains why it wasn't. So pandemic or not, we were due to have this market panic, and we were due to enter into some kind of recession or mid-cycle slowdown, which I'll talk a little bit more as we go along. So I'm going to gift that to you for attending tonight. So thank you very much. Now, we're going to cover the she-cession or pink session that some commentators are calling it. We're going to cover ways to get your business or your personal finances recession-proof, building your team, who needs to be on your team, what's in store for the economy and investment markets over the next 6 to 10 years. And I really want you by the end of this to see that you can do all of that, and you can do it with ease. So you can let the cycle do the heavy lifting for you. Put together your structure, your foundation, and then have your specific actions at specific times, and then you let the cycle do the work. It is something that can be done without going through the ups and downs and the emotional roller coaster ride. So the she-cession of 2020 and 2021. So in June last year, in June 2020, the Treasury, Australian Government Treasury, confirmed that the downturn is disproportionately negatively impacting women. And they confirmed that because the types of jobs that were lost were jobs relating to the arts, to recreation, retail, and accommodation. And that's where mainly women, or predominantly, were in those, or are in those positions. In fact, out of the COVID job losses, 55% of those losses belong to women. And for those jobs where males and females, the hours, got reduced, women's roles were reduced far greater at 11.5% and men 7%. And even in regards to the JobKeeper, a lot of women's roles, the JobKeeper was excluded for them because they take on more short-term casual positions, so they weren't eligible for the JobKeeper. And this particular statistic I found quite disturbing. It was in the US. And in the month of December in 2020, all of the jobs lost in the US belonged to women. All of them in the month of December 2020. Now, that's astounding that happened. The other thing to consider in regards to women is the kind of recession that we've been in. They call it the Pandemic Recession as well as the She-cession. And the people that are predominantly on the front line in regards to the health sector are women. And so there's been a double whammy there in more ways than one. Now, in terms of domestic violence, there has been an increase in domestic violence. So this is not just about jobs. This is about how else women are affected when it comes to recessionary periods. And in particular, this one that we've been in with the pandemic, and you've got lockdowns. Now, this is dear to my heart in regards to domestic violence. And it's because when I was a young policewoman, I was working with South Australia Police Force. And the South Australian Police Department is very progressive. And in the 1990s, they put together the very first domestic violence unit. And I worked as one of the first domestic violence unit operatives. And I used to attend specifically domestic violence incidents. So I would work with domestic violence victims and domestic violence aggressors, perpetrators. And I understand about the cycle of violence in relation to domestic and family violence. Now, I do know that there are some men that are victims of domestic violence, but predominantly it's women that suffer the most. And those that work in the domestic violence sector are saying that 2020 will be remembered as the worst year for domestic violence that any of them can ever remember. 1 in 10 women experience family and domestic violence. Now, I get goosebumps when I think about that, because I've seen it firsthand, the suffering in relation to that. So it's not just about jobs when it comes to recessions. The other statistic that I found quite disturbing was actually in Indonesia. And in Indonesia in 2020, there were 3 times as more dispensation requests for child marriage. Now, what that means is 3 times as much parents applying to the church to be able to sell off or force their child or daughters into marriage. And the reason? To ease their economic burdens. That's the extent that some people are doing in those countries relating to daughters. Now, I find that really disturbing. The other thing relating to women is in relation to responsibility, and even the Grattan Institute in New South Wales have come out with specific statistics. Generally, women do more of the unpaid work in the home environment generally. Now, the unpaid work being the home management, caring for elderly parents, and just looking after the home. With the pandemic and the lockdowns, both of unpaid work for male and females has increased, but women far more than men. They took on more of the homeschooling and more of the care for elderly parents and more of the home management, in addition to running their businesses, working or not. They took on more of the unpaid work. So there's more than just jobs, is what I'm saying. Now, in regards to the stimulus, okay, the government response, it's been amazing, hasn't it? You know, throughout the world, the government stimulus. But in Australia, there's been roughly 500 billion that's been promised, and a lot of that already spent in regards to stimulus. Now, about 110 billion so far has been put towards construction. What the government has done is put together an economic security package specifically targeted for women. Fantastic, you'd say. But the amount of money, the budget out of that 500 billion is 240 million. Now, women are 51% of the population. So out of that 500 billion, the 240 million accounts for 0.038%. Or in other words, it translates to $40 per female worker, or $8 a year until 2025. That's the stimulus specifically related to women. But in addition to that, the stimulus is to drive women towards the sectors relating to STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, they're amazing sectors to work in, but they're not generally the sectors that women in general predominantly work in. And that package, the economic security package, again relates to jobs, not domestic violence, not unpaid work. Again, it gets back to jobs. So it wouldn't surprise you then to know that the government's expenditure review committee is made up entirely of men. And globally, the COVID response national level committees are also predominantly made up of men. Now, it's not the first time that when there's been a recession that women have been left behind. And one example is in the GFC and in the UK. In the UK, part of the decisions that the budget that was made in 2010 was to actually axe 500,000 public sector jobs. Now, those jobs were mainly affecting women. And the UK government openly admitted that they did not give due regard to the impact on women. Now, I'm telling you all of this because it's going to happen again. Women are not going to be addressed. The areas that women need it most are not going to be addressed in the next recession either. And that's why we need to talk about this and do something about it. That's why I need to do something about this. That's why I personally need to spend my time predominantly helping women. Women in the workforce. Women in Australia earn an average of 14.6% less than men. And when it comes to full-time roles, they earn 22% less than men. Even in sectors where women are overrepresented, like healthcare and education, women are paid 21% less than their male counterparts for the same role or similar role. Now, if we keep going the way we are, it's going to take 36 years for women to have pay parity. Another 36 years. Women retire with 47% less savings than men, yet women live longer than men. Now, women in general don't work as long as men because women are the ones that carry the child, give birth to the child, and they nurture the children, and they do more unpaid work. So that is, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm not saying that. It's actually reality. What I am saying, when it comes to these recessionary, extreme periods of time, we have to stand on our own 2 feet because the stimulus relates to jobs and it will focus on construction and it will continue to do that. So let's do something about it. Let's have women in our lives be financially independent or financially secure. So we're going to now talk about your foundation, how you can build this framework. And if you already have a good framework, fantastic. I'm going to show you how you can keep it. If you've already built a financially secure and comfortable position, I'm going to show you how you can keep it. So I'd now like to introduce Jen. Now, Jen is a financial planner, and I actually also work with Jen with She Thrives with Ease. And Jennifer, she's been an amazing financial planner, and I do bounce some ideas with her in terms of my own situation. I'm just going to get you up, Jen, so that we can see your face. There you are, Jen.
There I am.
There you are. Jen, you've got 3 kids, you're married, you run your own business. Was there anything that I was saying in regards to my She-cession package there? Could you relate to any of that?
I could relate to all of it. And I certainly know plenty of women who, that additional work due to lockdown as well, that just pushed people almost over the edge because we do take on more, and with the whole family being at home. So in my situation, there was 5 of us working from home. It became, really difficult to juggle everything in the one space. So yeah, I can relate to that. And when you talk about superannuation, I always, I did my master's, I think in 2002, so 19 years ago. And my research project was on why women have less superannuation when they retire. And what you're saying about nothing changes, well, I reread that a few months ago, and nothing has changed.
Yes. Okay.
Nothing
I
has
get
changed.
that. Yeah. All right. So let's get on with this, because we've got to take action, don't we?
We do.
So I want you to share with us your top 5. You know, this is about building the foundation, and so for you listening, you may be able to tick off, whatever Jen says. I've done that. I've done that. I've done that. I've done that. Fantastic. Or you've done a couple of things and you need to do some more. Whatever it is. I'm hoping that you'll be able to walk away with something that we're going to share. So Jen, your top 5, what's your first one in terms of building a strong foundation?
My first one would be to clarify your current status in terms of cash flow. So ins versus out, and importantly, whether you currently have or you can work your budget so that you have a surplus.
Okay. So being clear on it, not spending too much than you're earning. Now, personally, in regards to my businesses, I have spreadsheets for Africa. I know exactly what's going on. And I love spreadsheets in regards to the businesses over the years. But personally, I'm a shocker. Right? Because I'm like, I don't want any budget telling me I can't buy that dress or that jacket, and I can't buy that bottle of champagne. You know, I'm just saying how it is. So I'm terrible at a personal budget. So is there anything that makes it easier for people like me?
Well, and you're not alone in terms of that view of budgeting. So budgeting is not about deprivation. It's about working out how you can spend smarter and then save the things that you can achieve. And no one budget software or spreadsheet is right for everybody. So if you are very iPhone savvy, for example, or Samsung savvy, there are lots of apps that can easily track your spending, and you can use different periods of time from 1 week to 1 month, and they will register every time you spend. Or if you're old school, I've got heaps of spreadsheets that start you on your way that are really easy to follow. I think it's important that budgeting's not difficult. It's you know, it should be something that is relatively easy, and it's important to remember too, it doesn't have to be to the perfect dollar. It's about getting a sense of where you're at.
And not about deprivation. I like that one.
Not about deprivation.
Okay. What's your next one?
Number 2 would be understanding your investment position with regard to debts versus assets, including super. It's like a assets and liability statement for your own personal finances.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it for business, but I mean, you yourself are your own business.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's needed. What are some of the benefits in relation to debt that, having it right there in front of you? What are some benefits of doing that?
One of the key benefits is it allows you to identify your different debts within your position. So, there are good debts and there are kind of bad debts. And we probably all know that bad debts are things like credit cards that have high interest rates, or personal loans, often taken out on depreciating assets. So if we can do a little list of what we have and how much we owe, we can then focus on the areas that are the bad debt. And once we understand that, we can get rid of that debt and then work on other debt that we have. Bearing in mind too that some debt, if you're looking at investment debt, actually has tax benefits. So we want to get rid of the debt that sort of offers us no personal gain beyond the new car or whatever it might be.
And some people will say a bad debt is the debt you have on your home, because the expenses relating to that, including the cost of credit, is not tax deductible. So I think that's a great idea. I do have my own personal asset and liability statement. I love looking at it, especially at growth times, because I love updating it and to see how my assets are increasing in value. That makes me feel good. So it's very important to do that, including your superannuation as well.
Yes.
You know, that is an asset. That is an asset you have to put in your personal asset and liability statement. What's your third one?
My third one is protection of income and protection of the family via appropriate insurances.
Okay. So, gosh, to me, insurances, yes, they're necessary up until a point. You know, I mean, the idea is to become self-insured. Mm-hmm. But until you're at the point of being self-insured, you're protecting your income, aren't you? Because you need your income to pay for living, but also that cash flow for your investment portfolio and having those cash flows coming in.
Definitely.
How often should it be assessed then? Insurances be assessed?
So when we talk about planning in general, we do look at, you know, what do you want to achieve? What are your goals? What are your financial goals? What are your lifestyle goals? Whether it's a holiday or private schools, whatever it might be. And we spend a lot of time doing that, and we review them as we go. So you update your spreadsheet with your new growth levels and that sort of thing. But we often neglect to actually review our insurance position. So as you mentioned, we are trying to self-insure, but realistically for most people, until they get to that level, if they don't have insurances and something unforeseen happens, then all of that hard work actually goes out the window. And I often say to clients, at what point did your car, which we all tend to insure, become more important than your ability to earn income? And it's never more important. So for new people to insurance, income protection is usually the one that we really need to enable that we can continue to earn an income.
Yeah. And just before we go on to the next one, you know, if you have, I know you can have income protection insurance in your superannuation or outside, and you got to be very clear what happens with that if you need it, because the tax and how it flows out to you as a person are two different things. But that's something for an insurance specialist to talk about.
Definitely.
So what's your fourth one?
My fourth one is be open to changing and updating your structures as life changes and you move through life phases.
Yeah, okay. So what are some examples in your experience?
In my experience, if depending on the situation, different structures open up opportunities that might not be available if you hold something or an asset, for example, in your own name. So let's look at a self-managed super funds. It allows you more flexibility and choice. So with regard to timing that you're going to talk about later, it gives you more choice and flexibility to manage your own investments in line with that timing. Other structures like trusts or companies might offer tax benefits, as well as asset protection. So, you know, companies being able to hold the asset without merging or muddying the waters between personal and company. And obviously tax minimisation is something that can have a big impact on your end position.
Yes. Yeah, that's good, Jen. That's good. And lastly, what's your fifth one?
Number 5 is looking at your superannuation. So how many funds do you have? What kind of fees? Are there any insurances built in? Those kinds of issues.
Yes. In terms of helping women increase their superannuation balance, this next question is important, because I want to know, is it easy enough for those that have a retail super fund in an SMSF, you're in charge of your own investment structure. And but someone that has, say, like a colonial super fund, can they easily change their asset allocation, like from growth back to defensive to balance? Is that possible?
Yep, it's really easy. But it's a good point, because a lot of people don't know how to do it. Usually it's a case of logging online and changing from, let's say, conservative to growth, and you can do that. So I think with superannuation, most people don't have an understanding of where their superannuation's at, and it's the second biggest asset apart from our home for most people. So it's a really good point to maybe go and revisit your superannuation and get a better understanding of where it's at and what you can do with it. So when the time does come, you can act on that.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about timing in a little while. So keep that in mind, in regards to those of you that have your different superannuation funds. You can change your asset allocation, and that will help your balance when you do indeed need to access it. Jen, thanks for that. It's really very much appreciated. So we've got Sarah, and let me just... Sarah is a credit specialist and highly qualified, but also highly experienced. I mean, Sarah's been a credit specialist mortgage broker, I think, for over 15 years. And she's full disclosure here, she's refinanced pretty well all of our portfolio and done very well with it. And I think I've referred Sarah to most of my girlfriends. So it's really great to have Sarah here with us, just to give us some your top 5, Sarah, in relation to credit. So what's your number one?
Okay, well, the number one question that I always get hit with, Kath, is how much can I borrow? And it's my favourite and my least favourite question, because it's a really tricky one to answer. The basic answer is that every lender will lend a different amount in different situations. And how much you can borrow is really important to know, because if you're wanting to go out and buy a property, whether it's owner occupied or investment, you want to know sooner rather than later what you can do. And I think this is why I personally always think it's a good idea to use a broker, because if you walk into your local branch, they may not be the most generous lender on a panel of lenders. And I think it's really important, to know just what's out there and what you can do if you're wanting to leverage your financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You've got to know. You can't wait. If there's an opportunity there, you want to access that opportunity, not wait a number of months to see what your credit situation is, because there are times when leveraging is on your side, and there are times when it's not. So I think that's a really great one. Spend the time working out what credit you can access, and also that can change, can't it? Sarah, that's why you, sorry if I'm raving on here. That's why you need your asset and liability statement, because as your assets increase in value, it could allow you to perhaps access more.
Yes.
And so it all works together.
And absolutely. As your financial situation changes, what you can access changes. And the other little thing I was going to throw in here is, if you've ever jumped online and tried to do it on an online calculator, don't. They are horrendously inaccurate. And every lender lends different amounts, and it's something I will actually spend a lot of time doing. So, this is where I think it's important to have a really good team around you.
Yes, good point. What's your number 2?
Which credit product is suitable? And here we're looking at things like a fixed rate or a variable rate. People often say to me, how do you think interest rates are going to move? Should I lock in? What I will say is there's no right and wrong answer here. It comes down to you and what your personal situation is. So, for example, if you've got owner-occupied debt, you've got plenty of excess income and you're wanting to smash out that owner-occupied debt. I think Jen's talked about a little bit about what's good debt, what's bad debt. Your owner-occupied debt's not tax deductible, so that's why you might go a variable home loan product, because a fixed won't allow you to pay extra to the same extent. So once again, it's about your personal situation.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, what your end goal is, you know, because for some people, having an interest-only loan and a fixed rate for their owner occupier might actually fit with their overall investment structure and investment plan and strategy. So it is quite an individual thing.
Yes.
In terms of that question, should I fix, should I not? Well, you know, I'm going to touch on that because it comes back to your understanding of this 18.6 year cycle. So anyway, I won't say any more about that. What's your number? I think we're up to number 3. To number 3.
Yep. Okay. Number 3 is, what type of repayment should I have? Should I have principal and interest? Should I have interest only? Again, it'll come down to your personal situation. If we're talking owner-occupied debt, often that will be principal and interest. Some of our responsible lending guidelines dictate that owner-occupied debt needs to be paid down. So you'll see a lot of lenders really only want to work in the principal and interest field there. Investment debt, often we will do interest only, but again, it comes down to what an individual can borrow. If you take out an interest only loan, then how the lenders look at it, they say, okay, if we do interest only for 5 years, we've got 25 years to pay off that principal, which forces your repayments up. We're therefore going to lend you less. So again, different aspects of this can be tied together. That's why what we do is influenced by an overall picture.
Yes. Yeah. Nothing's vanilla, is it? You know,
No.
It's not. And again, you know, someone might choose to do interest only for their principal place of residence and be prepared to pay a higher interest rate to have greater cash flow to enable them to take out more credit for other opportunities. So it's having that team around you to be strategic in that way.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And your fourth
is, which entity should I borrow in? And this is something, you know, Jen touched on again. And again, it comes back to having a good team around you. Should it be a company? Should it be a self-managed super fund? Are you going to do an investment property in your personal name? It is really important to get it correct from the start, because to change entities down the track is expensive. It is seen as one entity is selling the property to the other, which means you will pay stamp duty. You know, so it can easily be costing you $40,000, $50,000 if you get it wrong. So you get
the other thing I've seen also, Sarah, is people buying property in their self-managed super fund versus buying it in their own name or partner's name. The cash flows and tax treatments are 2 different things. So you cannot have a cash flow for your individual person. I think that's the same thing that's going to apply if you purchase it in your SMSF. So you've got to be clear about that.
Yeah.
And that's really where you need a good strategic accountant as well.
Yes.
You know, absolutely.
Good team.
Yeah. And your last one, Sarah.
My last one is, should I refinance and do some debt consolidation? And the answer to that is yes. A mortgage is often the biggest liability people hold. And if you're not constantly reviewing it and looking at what you're paying, looking at what your interest rate is, then it's likely to be costing you a lot of money. Over time, all lenders tend to become uncompetitive, and we have this thing called rate creep, which means you can take out a loan today. It can be a really competitive loan product, In, say, 2 or 3 years, it's not going to be that competitive. And I see it all the time. People have had a home loan. It's in set and forget. They just pay it every month. Don't think twice about it. Now, if your home loan, I'll use some specific examples. If you have a $500,000 home loan and over time, your interest rate is 1% higher than what it should be, you're donating $5,000 a year to your bank. You know, think about that. Do you really want to be donating money to a bank? If you're going to donate, there's lots of worthwhile causes. Your bank is one of them.
Yeah. It's worth working with someone that actually reminds you to assess the rates. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. I absolutely get that. The other thing, because we are talking a lot about property here, is in terms of your team, is having a really good property advocate on your team. Someone that is really fussy about understanding what an investor needs and the investor criteria in regards to property. I thank you both, Jen and Sarah, for your top 5. It's very much appreciated. I want to move into part 3 of this webinar, and I'd like there to be some questions. So if anyone has any questions, if you can go to the Q&A section or the Q&A button, ask any questions and we'll address those at the end of the webinar. So please go for it. But part 3 relates to timing. So the timing of your investments, not only your investments, timing of your business entry, exits or hold. Timing is what I believe is to be imperative. Once you've got your structure in place, your foundation in place, the timing is the thing to get right. And I came across this article in 2011. Now, mind you, it was written in 2008. Now, in 2011, I was looking for reasons why the GFC occurred. I'll explain why in a minute, but this jumped out at me because it was the headline even, property will fall until at least 2011. And I looked at the US property prices, and it was. I mean, the properties were still falling in 2011. In fact, they bottomed in 2012. US stocks will lead the way, and they were, they were going up. Now, this is written in 2008, so it was blowing my mind. And I've circled, a bit there. The banking crisis is not a random event. It's history repeating. I'm like, that really, it made me stand up and take note because, we're just coming through, or in the GFC. I remember the 87 crash and the early 90s recession. I remember about the Great Depression, reading about it. There were others of these, and I thought if it's history repeating, then I want to know about it. So I fortunately met Phil Anderson and got his book and started to learn from Phil. And he's put together this property clock. It's actually like more of a clock in relation to how the economy moves. Now, this image is from our website, the homepage on our Property Sharemarket Economics website, and it is interactive. So when you go onto the website, if you hover over the numbers, these boxes pop out, and it gives you an explanation of what occurs through each phase of the 18.6 year cycle. Now, on the website, we also have these years when we think in the future things are going to occur. Now, note that the clock is at 12:30. So 12:30, then we go into number 13. But this is the original clock. This is Phil's original clock, and he's got it on page 360 of his book, The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking. And he's identified indicators throughout the 18.6 year cycle. And it starts at number 1 on the inside of the clock, goes through to 11 and 12. Now note 11 and 12 mid-cycle slowdown, And then it goes through to number 13, where the real estate cycle is in full swing. Now, note we're at 12:30 now, so we're coming into this real estate cycle in full swing. And it comes around the outside of the clock through to number 18, stocks enter a bear market, and down we go into a land price induced recession. So this is also on our resources page of the website, but this is another graph that I think shows you a little bit more easier of how it actually looks and plays out. And I want to give thanks to Arkhil Patel for this, because he put this together. He's taken information from Fred Harrison, who's another economist in the UK, who's a brilliant author in the subject, as well as Phil Anderson, and he's put together this diagram. But what we have here are the dates of the cycles after World War II. Now, if you want information about these cycles prior to World War II, go to Phil's book. All the history is there in detail. It's an amazing read. But I've underlined the current cycle. So 2011 being the beginning of the current cycle. And here we are in 2020. And you can see we've got this expansionary phase yet to come. So we have like a 7-year expansion phase in the first half, this slowdown or recession. It's a short period of time. And then we go into the second expansionary phase. But I'm going to show you this next graph because I think you can see it a little bit easier. Here's that first expansion phase. We had a top in 2020, and now we've come down into 2020, 2021. And this is where we are today. We're coming through the bottom of the current mid-cycle slowdown recession. But note that the second half, the second expansion phase, how much greater it is compared to the first one. And note this topping that we believe will occur around 2026, possibly 2027, and what's going to occur after that into 2030. Now, this is the scariest part because this is where we get into the winner's curse phase. Now, I mentioned to you a bit earlier about the reason why I was looking for the reasons that the GFC occurred. And that's because in the GFC, in this winner's curse phase, family members of mine, they made some brilliant investment decisions, absolutely brilliant, but at the wrong time. They did it in the winner's curse phase. In the last cycle, that was around 2005, 2006, beginning of 2007. That was the winner's curse phase. And they lost just about everything. Now, it's so important that you understand this, because if you don't, and if you wait for this social proof when everyone's diving into the market, it's going to be very hard to then get out, because people are selling like crazy and there's panic. You think, if we think that what's occurred in regards to our pandemic recession has been difficult and scary, as Phil says, it's a dress rehearsal for really the end of cycle panic and recession to come. But note that typically the mid-cycle, which is what we're in, doesn't last very long. But the end of cycle lasts around a 4-year period. So what do you do about it? Now, I've got this amazing chart here, which I love. It's very pretty. It's got lots of great colors. It's an action plan. So we've still got the same shape, but we've got actions through every part of the cycle. But I want to show you 3 in particular. The first one is what you could have done leading up to the peak in 2020. And in fact, these are the things that Phil and Arkhil had been telling their subscribers for years leading up to the peak in 2020. Let's have a look at some. Tighten your exit strategies and take profit on shares. expecting a 10 to 25% decline. Now, we actually ended up having around a 40% decline, and that was due to the fear, the pandemic fear in the market. So it says take profit, but up here, expect real estate prices to slow or decline. Nothing about taking profit, just expect it, hold it, just expect it, but not to take profit. So it's a very different suggestion. And then over to the right, ensure you're positioned to manage your cash flow during an economic asset price decline. Now, if you had this information last decade, you could have prepared for this. And this is what we want you to do. Prepare for these types of expansions and prepare for the contractions to come. Now, where are we then in number 4? Okay, this is around about where we are now. What are some of the actions that you could take? Buy real estate, build on your real estate and share portfolios. You can seek distressed real estate, re-enter the share market after the bottom has been confirmed. Take easy credit to leverage as much as possible, because credit eases more in the second half of the cycle. It's also take the opportunities, if you're that way inclined, to go into joint ventures. Take the opportunity to do that if that fits within your overall strategy. So there's some of the actions that you could take once you have your infrastructure and your framework in place. But there's one more that I wanted to show you, and that is leading into the winner's curse phase of this current cycle. And these are some of the actions. Look into long-term fixed rates for long-term holds. That's the time when you look at, do I now need to fix my rates? Because it's around here where we start to look at interest rates lifting up. Start preparing exits from real estate assets. Start preparing your exits. So now we're talking about either exiting, holding. We're not talking about building on your property portfolio. We're talking about exiting, looking at exiting and holding. Continue to build your share portfolio. In doing that, expect volatility in the market. So there's some suggestions of what you could do once you've ridden this massive expansion phase that we believe is due to come in the next 5 to 6 years. Now, these are the things that will help you, once you've got your foundation in place, will help you take advantage of this massive expansion in asset prices that we believe are likely to come. Understanding this 18.6-year cycle and the drivers of the cycle. So once you use that, you can then apply it to your business, whether you enter a new business, whether you expand your business, whether you exit your business, investments, whether you enter, you hold, or you exit in the property and share market. In terms of your education, I'd really encourage you to look at our Boom Bust Bulletin subscription. It's put together to allow you to understand from a new perspective. What I mean by that, if you're new to this, it's going to help educate you on the drivers of this cycle and help you stay on top of it. So that's the Boom Bust Bulletin. I really encourage you. I do wish actually that something like this was around when I first got involved in learning, 10 years ago. But the beauty of now working with Phil and Arkhil is that we can put something like this together and make it easier for people to learn. Now, you then build your foundation. You get your great financial planner in place, your credit specialist, your accountant, your share market investment advisor, and your property advocate. They're the things, once you have that in place, you just then let it go. You don't follow the noise. You just let it go and you let it build, and you make your decisions in a calm way at the right time. Now, all of that is great. And have all of your team in place, great, on one proviso. None of it, and I'm serious about this. You might want to do all all you like in the world in regards to the cycle, but if your team isn't on board with you and understand the cycle themselves, that's a scary thing. Because when you get to this part of the cycle, the winner's curse phase, when we are going to be encouraging you to hold, to deleverage, perhaps exit some of your positions, I tell you what's going to be happening at that point, because it's happened every single cycle. It's going to be frenetic. There's going to be people diving into the market that shouldn't be in the market. And those that don't understand the drivers of these cycles and that it indeed exists will be encouraging you to get in and stay and take on more. And that is scary, because that is what happened to my family members. And I'm sure if you think about it, you know people that that's happened to as well. So when we say build your team, build a team that understands this so that they can guide you. But also it's important that you have an understanding yourself so that you can also take some control. But bringing that all together means that you can indeed build on this expansion in your portfolio, in your superannuation, in your investments. Take advantage of this expansion that is to come, and then get yourself ready to protect it when we head into this downturn at the end of the cycle. So what's going to happen now is, I think you would have received an email already, and that's giving you a copy of Phil's ebook, What the Hell Just Happened, explaining the panic that happened last year, and also giving you some more history in regards to the cycles and, again, why they will repeat, or likely to repeat. And I also would encourage you to take up our Boom Bust Bulletin subscription. It's $47 US a year. The link's there in the email that you've been sent. I do encourage you to do that. Start to learn about these cycles. If you can, open your mind up to it. If this is the first time that you've been hearing about it, it's a great education piece. It's building on your education. So I do encourage you to do that. So now I think we're at the time where we've got some questions. And let's go back to that. Okay. What questions?
There's one for you, Cathy, that builds on the timing, which is a really good question from Lachlan. And his question is, so in relation to re-entering the share market, once the bottom has been confirmed, well, we are now close to all-time highs on the ASX. Is this still considered the base from which further growth will occur?
Okay. Look, thank you, Lachlan. It's a brilliant question. There's still volatility to come. Markets don't go up forever. There's still volatility to come. We are still within this mid-cycle period, and we are expecting more volatility. So that's still to come within 2021. Now, one of the reasons why we do this service for our Boom Bust Bulletin subscribers and our Property Sharemarket members is to help identify the timing of peaks and bottoms and market turns. So we think there's still opportunities to get into the market once we get through the volatility that we believe is due to come in 2021. I hope that's helped to answer your question.
And there's one here probably for Sarah. If you have two investment loans on two separate properties, is it better to consolidate them or is it better to keep them separate?
I tend to keep them separate. There's no real financial gain in consolidating them. And what you'll find is one loan probably relates to one property, the other loan relates to the other property. If you sell one, you will clear that loan. It's an easier way to keep track of where you're at for each property. So keep them separate.
Great.
And another one for you, Cathy, which is really interesting given the international audience, is every country in the same cycle as one another, e.g. same years?
Thanks, Lorraine. I think you were the one who gave that question. That is such a great question. Yes, I love it. It's an economic cycle. Okay. Now you'll see, Phil says it's the secret life of real estate and banking, because this cycle is led by US land prices. The US is still the largest economy in the world. It's US land prices that lead the cycle. And economies are then affected by the peaks and troughs of US land prices. So in terms of Western countries, Western economies, yes, they do follow this timing. Now, it might not be exactly today or to the month, but overall, they do follow this timing. In terms of land values, even in Australia, land values have each state, it has its own like mini cycle. Melbourne and Sydney are very similar, but Perth has a different land cycle because of it being a commodity state. So you've got to look at things like that in terms of the property peaks and troughs, but from an economic perspective and a share market perspective, yes, Australia and the UK does follow the similar timings to the US. So that's why it is pertinent to so many of us. You really can't go too wrong if we follow these timings. I hope that answers your question. Okay, and I think there's another question.
Yeah, from Jay. Where is a good resource for finding financial planners, accountants, etc., that are familiar with the cycle?
Yes, yeah. Look. What's really interesting is we have Property Sharemarket Economics quite a number of accountants and financial advisors that learn from us at our members, and they deep dive into this information. But whether they use it with their clients, I'm not quite sure. But if I believe, if you do want to access a team that can help you with this, you can. I'm sure that Sarah and Jen can answer any of your questions. So if you, the website is www.shethriveswithease.com.au. So if you go onto that, you can ask them any questions as well.
Yep.
All right.
I think that's all we've got. There's one about receiving a link to the book that, Cathy, you might follow that up later.
Yes, to Phil's book.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, fantastic. Well, we will send out an email to everybody with a link to the ebook, a link of where you can buy Phil's book. So we'll be sending all of that out to you, and then eventually next week or the week after, you get a recording of tonight as well, and also a link to subscribe to the Boom Bust Bulletin, just to get started with your education. So we've got a little bit over time because we did start a little bit late, but thank you. I'll just quickly, at 60, is it too late to invest? No, Rona, it's not.
Never too late.
It's never too late to invest. It's the timing.
Now.
It's the time is so good now to do it. And yes, it's not too, absolutely not. I'm nearly there myself, right? It's not too late to invest, really. If we get this timing right and we don't wait for social proof, and we do it wisely. I'm not saying that every property that you buy is going to be a winner, or every share. You still got to do your work there. But if you have your structure in place and you're wise with that, use the timing, It can be very, very profitable. That is my hope for you and for us to be able to help you with that. All right, I think that we will sign off now. So thank you very, very much, everybody. It's been wonderful to have you here attending tonight. Thank you, and I wish you a wonderful day or evening wherever you are in the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.